Hello there, welcome to Planet America's Situation Room. I'm John Barron.
I'm Licciardello, and boy, do we have a situation.
The U.S. is threatening to cut intelligence sharing and weapons to Ukraine. In fact, a 28-point peace plan is currently in the works.
One way or the other, we have to get it ended.
President Trump said the U.S. proposed peace deal is not a final offer.
Chaos and confusion as America's ad hoc Ukraine diplomacy leaves allies baffled and Russia emboldened.
And as MAGA Marjorie Taylor-Greene quits Congress, Trump has a new bestie, Zohran Mamdani. But first.
Last week, reports emerged that Ukraine had until the end of this week to accept a 28-point peace plan to end the war with Russia.
We have a way of getting peace, or we think we have a way of getting peace. He's going to have to approve it.
According to a draft posted online by a Ukrainian lawmaker, this proposal would require Ukraine to change its constitution to prohibit any effort to join NATO. It would force Kyiv to recognise Russian control of the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions, parts of which Ukraine still holds, and cap the size of the Ukrainian army at just 600,000. And this was reportedly being presented to Ukraine very much as an ultimatum: sign the agreement or lose US support in its war with Russia. Not surprisingly, given the spoils being offered up, basically everything he's been asking for, Russia's Vladimir Putin seemed very keen.
Этот текст есть. Мы получили его по имеющимся каналам взаимодействия с американской администрацией. Полагаю, что и он может быть положен в основу окончательного мирного урегулирования.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, facing setbacks on the battlefield, a corruption scandal weakening his political standing at home, and a long, cold winter ahead, was not ruling out making concessions as he prepares his nation for what he then described as a difficult choice.
Зараз один з найважчих моментів нашої історії. Зараз тиск на Україну один з найважчих. Зараз Україна може опинитися перед дуже складним вибором. Або втрата гідності, або ризик втрати ключового партнера. Або складні 28 пунктів, або вкрай важка зима. Найважча та подальший ризик.
From his reaction, it was clear that Zelensky wanted a negotiation, not a fait accompli on Russian terms. And then, on Friday, President Trump was asked about the plan and Ukraine's reaction to it.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of
Well,
pretending...
he'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
And then yesterday, things got very confusing. South Dakota Republican Senator Mike Rounds announced that he had spoken to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who'd explained to him that this was not a US peace proposal, as has been reported. In fact, it had come from Russia. It was just their wish list.
I think he made it very clear to us that we are the recipients of a proposal that was delivered to one of our representatives. It is not our recommendation. It is not our peace plan.
Then Maine's independent Senator Angus King also weighed in.
The leaked 28-point plan, which according to Secretary Rubio is not the administration's position, it is essentially the wish list of the Russians that is now being presented to the Europeans and to the Ukrainians.
So this is a Russian plan, according to the senators. But then Marco Rubio took to social media to assert the proposal was in fact authored by the US, with input from the Russian side and previous and ongoing input from Ukraine.
Right, so Marco Rubio was contradicting Marco Rubio?
Yes, in the strongest possible terms.
Well, look, one reason for this confusion could be that there's more than one version of the plan out there, and possibly the 28-point plan published by Axios could be a direct leak from Russia. Now, why do I say that? Well, Trump's ace negotiator, Steve Witkoff, maybe can't tell a text message from a tweet. He seemingly intended to text someone the Axios article with the plan in it, along with the comment, "He must have got this from K," as in K for Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian negotiator. So what we think of as the negotiated plan might just be Russia's version of the plan. Although, for what's worth, Kirill Dmitriev denies leaking the plan, and the Axios journo involved insists it was the American version that he published. Either way, there's also evidence of heavy Russian input into that document from the syntax of certain phrases in the 28-point plan that are more common in Russian than in English. Like, for instance, point 3 reads, "It is expected that Russia will not invade neighbouring countries and NATO will not expand further." But the phrase, "it is expected," in that context isn't nearly as commonly used in English as it is in Russian. Similarly, the use of the words ambiguities and enshrine in the plan are also signs of Russian translation. Also, a sign of Russian input is just how many red lines for Ukraine they've shoved into one plan. Like, for instance, Ukraine having to give up land that Russia couldn't conquer in 4 years of fighting. John mentioned the Ukrainian military would be capped at 600,000. Well, it's currently 900,000, so that's a bit of a red line too. Not only could Ukraine not seek NATO membership, but they wouldn't even be allowed to host foreign troops in their own country, which would scuttle Europe's entire proposal to keep Russia from restarting the war. And as far as rebuilding Ukraine goes, America would be taking 50% of the proceeds from Russia's frozen assets, which seems a tad exploitative to me. And by the way, the reason giving up that land is such a deal breaker is because the Donbass has an industrial capacity, fortified positions and access to the sea that makes it ideal territory to launch the next offensive against Ukraine from. So in summary, this peace plan forces Ukraine to give Russia the ideal place to invade them from, while simultaneously forcing Ukraine to strip their army back and also not allowing them to accept defensive assistance from any other country as well. Oh, and America will nick a whole bunch of their rebuilding money. And in return, Russia's got to give up nothing. I can understand why Ukrainians aren't thrilled about all that. But on the other hand, there has been a side plan mooted that dangles the one thing that Ukraine desperately needs, the possibility of a real security guarantee. It's modelled on NATO's Article 5, and it says that significant, deliberate and sustained attack by Russia on Ukraine shall be regarded as an attack threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community, and that the US and its allies will respond accordingly, possibly with military force. Now, that guarantee will be for 10 years, but it could be renewed by mutual consent. Now, that all sounds great, John. Importantly, it involves America, which Ukraine desperately wants to be involved. But is it really an ironclad commitment? When you look back at it, it feels like there could be some wriggle room there, John. And also, America could withdraw extremely easily after 10 years. Most of all, that guarantee that I just read out, is that as strong as the one that Ukraine received in 1994? That was just completely obliterated by this war, just like that? Ukraine trading their ability to defend themselves for this guarantee, that would be a risk, a big risk. Then again, if they don't accept that risk, America's threatening to not only cut off weapon supplies for Ukraine, but even intelligence sharing, which would make it nearly impossible for Ukraine to hit targets inside Russia, as well as to defend themselves against Russia's attacks. Or maybe this is all negotiable. Because when Trump was asked whether the deal was take it or leave it, this is what he said.
Is this your final offer to Ukraine?
No, not my final.
So once again, John, there's a lot of uncertainty here about where Ukraine stands.
Yes, although ultimately not a lot of uncertainty as to where President Trump stands, because he essentially wants this war over. He doesn't seem to care too much how it comes to an end, and he's still not happy with the Ukrainians.
Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts.
Marco Rubio has been holding talks today in Geneva with Ukrainian representatives, trying to get this peace process back on track and figure out exactly what America now expects of Ukraine. To try and unpick this diplomatic schmozzle, I spoke earlier to the former US ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Ambassador Taylor, welcome back to Planet America. Can you explain to us exactly what's going on here? There's been so much confusion as to whether this is an American plan or a Russian plan that's been translated by the Americans. Secretary of State Rubio has been telling senators one thing and the public something else. What is your understanding?
John, I think the explanation must be that there are two documents here. The Russians clearly prepared one document in Russian, sent it to Steve Witkoff, our president's special envoy. Steve Witkoff apparently got it translated into English and then made some changes and then found out that the Russians had leaked the original document, the document that they sent. So the Russians leaked the document that you've been looking at, I've been looking at, all the press has been looking at, these 28 points with all these unacceptable, let's just say, I could make other adjectives here, but they're unacceptable demands, in particular on the Ukrainians. But they also make demands on NATO, and they make demands on Europeans, they make demands on G7, and so the unacceptable demands, and that's the document that was leaked and that we've all been analyzing. And I believe that Secretary Rubio was talking about another document, a document that the Americans came up with, that the Americans worked on. It may not even been 28. There's some reports that the American document is 26 points. And that is the proposal, the different document, that which we have not seen. That's the proposal that apparently was given by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, to President Zelensky, and that President Zelensky and his team are now working on in Geneva to make even better. That's my explanation of what the confusion is.
If that's the case, Ambassador, how do you explain the fact that the President of the United States doesn't seem to be aware that there were two different plans? He's been out there responding to questions about this 28-point plan.
I believe that President Trump doesn't get into those details. He just knows that there is a U.S. document that he wants, and to his credit, to Trump's credit, he wants to get the fighting stopped. He wants to end the war, and he has asked Witkoff to do this. And Witkoff, doesn't have great experience with the Russians or with the Ukrainians or with this part of the world. So it's understandable that he makes some mistakes, like he clearly has. But President Trump really wants to move this forward. I think Secretary Rubio has now taken responsibility and is the lead U.S. person, the lead U.S. official in Geneva, speaking for the U.S. government, is in charge of these documents, again, whether it's 28 or 26, whatever the American document is, that is working with the Ukrainians, and not just the Ukrainians now, John. It turns out he's also working with the Europeans. The Europeans, as I said earlier, have a lot at stake in this as well. So this is going to be a better document coming out.
Ambassador, the Europeans and the Ukrainians for the last 72 to 96 hours have been responding to what now seems to be a Russian plan as if it were an American plan. Whether or not they're back on the same page now, this has been absolutely chaotic, hasn't it?
Unacceptably chaotic. Exactly right. And this is the result. This chaos is what the Russians tried to produce. The Russians leaking their document to the press, and the press running with it, disinformation. This is what they do, and it's designed to cause confusion and chaos, and it succeeded in that. I believe we're getting back on track. I believe once we see what this new document is, that the Americans have come in with and that are now working with the Ukrainians and the Europeans, I think that will focus us back on a reasonable proposal that has the potential to end the war. Now, the important thing is the pressure that we need to put not on the Ukrainians, it's the pressure we need to put on Putin to agree to this document that will be the result of the Americans and the Ukrainians and the Europeans. Putin needs to agree, and Putin is not going to agree if he doesn't have pressure. If we need to put pressure on him economically, politically, militarily, in order to get him to agree to this proposal.
Apart from the issue of whether any land is given over to the Russians, are there any other potential deal breakers that you see, or are they the kinds of things that can be set aside for at least a period of time while at least a ceasefire can come into effect and they sort out the details later?
So that is the key. You brought up exactly the most important point, and that is a ceasefire. In the 28 points, again, the Russian version of this proposal, the last one is the ceasefire. No, that should be the first one. The first one is declare a ceasefire, and then we can worry about the other things. But you asked about the other things, the other red lines, the other problems. Ukraine needs to be sovereign. Ukraine is sovereign. Its sovereignty needs to be respected. And that means that no agreement can put a limit on Ukraine's military force. That's a sovereign right of Ukrainian people and government to decide that. The Russians can't tell the Ukrainians what to put in their constitution. They can't tell Ukrainians when to have elections. No, Ukraine's sovereign. They'll make the decision, all of these decisions, and those will be important for the Ukrainians to see. This has to be agreed by not just President Zelensky. It has to be agreed by all Ukrainians. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and it won't end the war.
Ambassador Bill Taylor, thank you for joining us on Planet America.
Thank you, John.
Facing an unprecedented Republican mutiny last week, President Trump's back down on the Epstein Transparency Act was made complete.
With no fanfare and no cameras in the room, President Donald Trump signed the Epstein Files bill into law.
The Epstein bill gives the Department of Justice 30 days to release the files, minus any redactions they might see fit to make due to privacy concerns, ongoing investigations or grand jury secrecy rules. Attorney General Pam Bondi was asked about that.
What are you doing here over the next 30 days as we understand it?
We will continue to follow the law with maximum transparency while protecting victims.
Protecting victims and anyone who is currently under investigation. President Trump ordered Bondi to investigate Epstein's ties to former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and others just days before he signed the Epstein bill into law, which was a little surprising given that it was only this July that the Justice Department announced that a review had revealed no incriminating client list and did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties like, say, Bill Clinton and Larry Summers.
What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information. There's information new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads.
Ah, yes, all that information, John. Information like Trump's new orders. We've got no idea if this is a real investigation or not, or if it's just going to be used as an excuse to torture Democrats with and to release even fewer of the relevant Epstein files. But I suspect the most important part of the Epstein Files release bill is not going to be the bit about releasing documents, but the bit about how within 15 days of releasing those documents, the DOJ has to provide a report listing all categories of documents that were withheld, all the redactions that were made, and their legal basis. Now that could be a very interesting report indeed. One other thing. This bill is only directed at the DOJ, but there could be heaps of other Epstein files hidden in other departments as well. For example, as Ron Wyden noted, the Treasury Department has their own Epstein file containing thousands of bank records, and those files would reveal where Epstein got his money, how he acquired and controlled his victims, who he trafficked them to, who enabled the trafficking, who else had control of Epstein's accounts, and what crimes they committed. Pretty important stuff. So let's hope Congress doesn't drop the ball here just because they might get some files of some kind eventually.
Yeah, before the House passed this bill to release the files, the White House was working particularly hard to try and get the four rebel Republicans, Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor-Greene, to remove their names from the discharge petition, which is what forced the vote to happen. And that is what saw a surprising falling out between Trump and Taylor-Greene.
Marjorie Taylor-Greene is a disgrace to our great Republican Party.
Then he added,
I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor-Greene.
Taylor-Greene was one of Trump's staunchest supporters after his second impeachment for trying to overturn the 2020 election, and she seemed rather taken aback by that, expressing a sense of betrayal.
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for.
Feelings officially hurt, but Trump was not done yet.
I think that her constituents aren't going to be happy. Already I have people calling me, they want to challenge her to a race in her district in Georgia.
So now facing the prospect of a Trump-backed challenger in her congressional district next year, on the weekend, Taylor-Greene sprung another surprise.
I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026. And I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
In that video, she also predicted that Republicans would likely lose next year's midterms and President Trump would face another impeachment.
It's all so absurd and completely unserious. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better.
I'm not sure I'd be taking this one at face value, John. Firstly, Taylor-Greene doesn't have a primary challenger yet. There could be anyone, or there could be no one. And her local Republican power brokers have already promised to support her in the event of a primary anyway. So why would she decide to retire 12 months out? Furthermore, the story Trump is running with, it just doesn't make a lot of sense as far as I'm concerned. Taylor-Greene's flipped out because Trump discouraged her from running for a Georgia Senate seat. And yes, he did commission a poll that showed her losing a potential Senate race. But that was 6 months ago, and Greene's been critical of Trump's Israel policy and Epstein policy a lot longer than that. Furthermore, Greene only really ramped up her critiques in the last month or so the timing's just all wrong. And I think there's more going on here than meets the eye. The only thing I'm really sure of is why she chose not to execute her decision immediately, but only on January 5 next year. That happens to be the day after her congressional pension kicks in, John. Yes, it's only $15,000 a year, but still, it all helps when you're unemployed.
Sure.
Bottom line, I'd be waiting a few months to find out what's going on with her, because I suspect we do not have all the relevant information yet.
Yeah, I suspect you're right on that. So, as one political friendship ends, it seems another is just beginning. For months, President Trump has been attacking the Democratic Socialist Mayor-elect of New York, Zohran Mamdani, like this.
I don't like to see a communist become mayor, I will tell you that.
He's a communist. I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York.
Not to mention Trump saying that Mamdani looks terrible, has a grating voice, and is not very smart. Bit harsh.
Well, along the way, Mamdani has also been happy to jab right back at Donald Trump too.
We can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism, despot, Donald Trump's fascism.
So, this week's first White House meeting between the communist mayor and the fascist president had all the makings of a historic blow-up.
There's a highly anticipated meeting that could bring high drama to the White House. We may only hear about it, but never see it. President Trump will host New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the White House this afternoon.
Pass the popcorn, and as the anticipation started to build up on Capitol Hill, Republicans were trying to wedge Democrats by pushing a motion in the House to denounce socialism in all its forms and oppose the implementation of socialist policies in the United States.
The vote is still being tabulated, but of note, the four leading Democrats in the House voted with Republicans to condemn socialism.
So the Democratic House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who you recall waited until the final week of the New York campaign to even endorse Mamdani, was among those who voted to condemn socialism in all its forms, presumably including Mamdani's brand of democratic socialism. Quite the stage setup. So, how did the Mamdani-Trump meeting go?
But I just want to congratulate. I think you're going to have hopefully a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am. I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually.
Wait, what? That was clearly very disappointing for the assembled press pack too. So they started asking questions about all those insults they've been throwing at each other. And Mamdani, standing rather like a prefect in the principal's office, was very diplomatic.
We are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers.
And President Trump showed some rather rare good humour as well.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting.
He was even better humoured in the follow-up, John, later on in the presser.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
He's pretty likeable when he's like that, Trump. Why doesn't he do that more often rather than threatening to lock people up or hang them or whatever? Trump was even so keen to get along with Mamdani that he screwed over a bunch of Republicans during the presser. Like, for instance, Republican candidate for New York Governor, Elise Stefanik.
Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zohran Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but she's out there campaigning, and, you know, you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of divisive?
She's a very capable person.
Isn't
But
that a kind of label?
you really have to ask her about that. But I don't particularly. I think I met with I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again.
Well, there goes that scare campaign. And the New York Post has been claiming that rich New Yorkers were about to leave en masse. Enter Trump.
Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
And that takes care of another talking point. At one stage, Trump even started slapping down a Fox News journo on Mamdani's behalf. I'm not sure Conservatives knew quite what to make of it all.
Yeah, I'm with them. I don't know what to make all of this, except that, well, once this meeting was over, Trump was posting lots of happy snaps on his social media site.
It was a great honor meeting Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City.
Although you have to know that Mamdani did manage to keep his smile rather muted and his hands firmly clasped in front of him instead of giving the traditional Trump thumbs up for the cameras as well. On the face of it, you'd have to say that a 34-year-old Ugandan-born Muslim democratic socialist and a 79-year-old billionaire from Queens, New York don't have a lot in common, but then again, they do share a populist streak. Both came to power as political novices and outsiders. And if nothing else, Trump respects a winner. Also, President Trump has plenty of money still tied up in New York properties. So I guess playing nice with the mayor-elect Mamdani is in his financial interests for now, even if there is a tempting political capital to be made out of picking another fight. Mamdani, meanwhile, also needs Trump. To an extent, he needs federal funds to deliver on many of his promises. So this is a very interesting and possibly very transactional relationship.
Also, Trump doesn't mind a camera, just between you and me.
Of course. Yeah.
Also, importantly, the last few weeks, Trump has been obsessed with the affordability issue and his poor polling on affordability. Rightly so, by the way.
That's Mamdani's core issue.
Yeah, exactly. So borrowing a bit of Mamdani's shine on affordability probably didn't go astray.
No. Good point. That is it for another trip to Planet America. This is our final Monday night show for ABC TV for 2025. Thank you for watching this year. And yes, we will be back on Monday, the 2nd of February, 2026.
And we're also going to be back for one more weekend edition on ABC News this Friday night. And you'll find both shows on ABC, iView, YouTube and Facebook. See you there.
Bye-bye.